but it's also critical here is forcing those Wraiths back, but not tanks being built by Fantasy. Fantasy needs tanks at this point. Hiya with very, very heavy pressure build. If Fantasy manages to push this back, he's going to be heavily economically ahead despite some SCV damage done to him. Hiya infamously playing with his mouth absolutely gapingly open. SCV's being pulled off the line just now, being ready to help him, and Fantasy waiting on his own siege. He has a couple of Goliaths and play only a couple of tanks. Hiya meanwhile building yet another bit on the bunker, yet another bunker even closer, just going to slowly inch in closer with those bunkers. SK Telecom 1T players looking at the screen, looking very nervous at that point. Finally siege ready for fighting as well. Has a couple of siege on the opposite side now. Both players just using Raxes to try to spot for the other players, but the Wraith is actually going to take the barracks of Fantasy's down, so Fantasy's not going to have a spotter in the air. The Wraith is not going to go down to those Goliaths because those tanks are in play. Wraith is going to be able to take that out, and there are those still Goliaths on the ground, but they're just not going to be allowed to come close enough to take that Wraith out. Rex still barely in play. It is going to burn out very soon, though. Fantasy barely still holding his natural expansion. The longer Hiya waits at this point, I believe, the further he's going to fall behind, though. He needs to keep this up. He is putting down his natural expansion, which I believe is definitely a smart play. Fantasy, meanwhile, getting a Vulture inside of Hiya's base, being able to do at least a little bit of damage, not too much harass, even though those SCVs might fight the Vulture off. But still, I think critical for Hiya right now, he kills that Vulture. Critical now is keep on the pressure, keep on the constant pressure, and break down the door. He's actually moving with tank from the north side position. He's going to be a siege at that position, keep doing a lot of damage. Fantasy is going to try to counterattack, but we're going to see whether this is actually Hiya's strategy, trying to split his attention and get at him from both sides.
This was a very meticulous build from Hiya. You can tell he's practiced this a long time because he knew exactly where to put those siege tanks. He was sieging, making sure that backup tanks couldn't come out here. And now he's pushing forward with his troop, trying to take out all the tanks here. He knows he has more tanks at this point. And Fantasy's trying to fight off with SCVs, but he's losing all of his tanks. Both barracks being floated here to get vision. And looks like Hiya is probably going to push in with more tanks here, try to push forward and take on Fantasy. You see, he took his Marines out of the bunker, so you might be thinking about attacking with those soon. He's coming in with a lot of siege tanks. Yeah, he's coming in from the top with his entire force here, just trying to push down and eventually take out this natural expansion, I think. The barracks still in play for Hiya, so he is getting some range for his siege tanks here. And his starports are not pumping, so that was a ploy on his part. And he's going to have to fight off these SCVs, but he does have some Marines to do this. Only a few Marines, though, so these siege tanks might be surrounded and actually picked off from Fantasy. Actually, yeah, I think Fantasy will be able to take care of this troop. And Hiya loses both of his tanks there. He only has a couple of Marines at this point. You can see I Love Uvi's like, heck yeah! But it looks like the natural expansion has come up for Hiya, but that expansion is behind Fantasy, so Fantasy is taking this game back. If Hiya wants to take this game at this point, he's going to have to do something special. Maybe keep pumping from the starports or something, because he uses there's the mascots. Oh, don't show my face, man. Shy mascots. But yeah, more tanks coming in for Fantasy. He's getting a huge tank count on the ground, and eventually he's going to be able to push into Hiya's base. And yeah, Hiya finally getting up his natural expansion. But yeah, this game is pretty much evened out at this point, and I'd even put Fantasy a little bit ahead.
Yeah, wow, just horrible mismicro in my opinion of Hiya there. Hiya should have unsieged his tanks. 4 Marines are not enough to defend against, what was that, 6 to 8 SCVs that take a while to kill for Marines anyway. Those SCVs got in close. Tanks were completely defenseless. As soon as he saw the SCVs, he should have unsieged his tanks, move back, kill the SCVs, then continue sieging. Would have put him off a little bit, but he wouldn't have lost his tanks. Now he's being forced to siege with two tanks against a couple of other tanks. He does hold it back, pulls a lot of SCVs. He's going to be able to get a surround of these tanks of Fantasies, though. Fantasy doing what Hiya should have done, unsieges his tanks, moves them back. Well, SCV is forced to not mind, finally going to move back. At this point, just trying to hold on, desperately trying to hold on, but such a bad position for him to be in. That was not an all-in strategy, but kind of very aggressive, the kind that if you don't pull off well enough, you are going to be behind. I think he might have also wanted to maybe continue producing Wraiths. Of course, with all his Goliaths in play, he couldn't really do that heavily, but I still think a couple of Wraiths right now would really help him out, be able to take some stationary targets out. But let's see, looking at the first-person view of Fantasy, does have those 2 bases, does have quite a few forces, actually moving in from the north side, could try to go for a force pincer and just surround the natural expansion of Hiya Snake, though actually floating his Raxes alongside as he just tries to get his siege tanks close enough. He, of course, also has Scan to help him out. Wraiths are coming into play. Finally, again from Hiya, he's going to be able to take on those stationary tanks. There are no Goliaths to support this time. So I think they could really help him out, those Wraiths, as long as no Goliaths come into play. But the Goliaths with Terran booster upgrades are in play. No cloaking for those Wraiths. One Wraith go down, and tanks on both sides, and the telecom bench looks immensely happy about what's happening right here.
Yeah, this is ridiculous. No, not ridiculous. This is ludicrous from Fantasy here. He's gone ludicrous speed. They've gone plaid, sir. Spaceballs, such a good movie. But yeah, I think there might have been the GG there. Yeah, the Hiya GG, because he knew he was completely behind in military count there. Fantasy, unbelievable. Fantasy is the next big Terran. People who are doubting Fantasy can just go stare into the mirror and cry, because they are completely wrong. Fantasy is going to move past Flash. He's going to move past Lita. He is going to be the next big Terran if he's not already, because he's just so good in every matchup. Every game he plays impresses me these days. So, yeah, I can't even believe it. Let's hope he doesn't do the Super Soaker thing again.
Every win, a different strategy. Actually, what am I supposed to do? You're supposed to just wave your hands like a weirdo and not do anything funny at all. Then run into the crowd and hug somebody who could be probably his parents. I'm assuming that's his family. He's gonna go around, oh yeah, I won. So yeah, Telecom one game away from winning the grand finals. And now it all comes back to Lomo to take on Best to try to hold on for the ace match so that Oz can once again field Jaedong.
Let's do this. Moving on.